Hola, ¿cómo estás, my fellow randoms? I told you I was going to try to switch up the introduction every episode, and I am going to make good on that promise. Now I just escalated it to a promise I think I may not be able to keep because it's pretty hard to continuously come up with iterations of saying hello to people. Anyway, hola, my fellow randoms. I'm Kev Duffy, and welcome to this. If I'm counting it right, it is our 15th episode of What's Your Random Podcast, where I discover and celebrate individual and independent creativity from the inception of an idea to the process of bringing it to life. Everybody has an idea. A creative is a person who could bring that idea into reality in some form to share with others. And we all have that capacity. Sometimes we just need to take action. The action of drawing, the action of writing, the action of being creative and bringing those ideas to fruition as something we could share with others. That's at the base and the core of this podcast. It's what I try to explore by interviewing guests who have their own creative projects. And oftentimes they're also pretty random and pretty specific to that person. And that's why every episode is worth listening to. And we're on 15, so go back and enjoy them all. And if you did enjoy this one and or others, please do follow us on all your podcast catchers out there, as well as YouTube, where you can watch face-to-face conversations between me and my guests and all of the expressions and gestures that go into that. I tend to look all over the place and have my arms flailing around, which some people, I'm not saying it as a statement, this is a question, some people might enjoy. If you do, let us know by hollering at us at What's Your Random on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And the most you could do, and something we would really appreciate, is if you share your favorite episode on wherever you are most active on social media, because that helps us expand our reach and hopefully tap into the ears and minds of creative friends of yours who may benefit from listening to one or hopefully all of our guests, because I certainly get a lot of nuggets of inspiration from everyone I talk to. And on that note, thank you to all my guests thus far, the 15th episode in today, and I'm still targeting 20 for 2020. I don't know the betting odds right now, but I'm feeling that they're leaning in favor of achieving my goal, and I'm certainly pushing towards it. So keep rooting us on here at What's Your Random, and hang on after the show, because I do a debriefing, a post-show wrap-up where I talk about the key takeaways from the episode, as well as areas where I think I might be able to improve the podcast and or my performance. And as I've said before, those two often go hand in hand. Without further ado, joining me on What's Your Random Podcast today is Brian Christopher White of Out Jogging Pictures. Brian is the director of an upcoming web series called Lost Found. So if you're looking for it, it's Lost/Found, and it is a web series that was recently successfully funded on Kickstarter. And I was really excited and interested to speak with Brian because web series is an area where I have a lot of interest, but not a lot of knowledge. So I was excited to learn more. And leading into the podcast, I was able to carve out a chunk of time and really engage with Brian's work up until this point, which includes 20 short films. And he finished his 20th in the year of 2020. And I really enjoyed watching his work, seeing his progression, the quality improving, the storytelling improving, and getting a sense for his artistic eye, both because he oftentimes is involved in filming and editing, but also because he is the writer of everything he's done up until this point, not including the up-and-coming web series Lost Found. So anyway, it was a very fun and engaging conversation. Brian had great takeaways for anybody who wants to be a independent filmmaker. You know, how to structure yourself, how to make the most of what you have. And, you know, if you want to make film, everybody has a camera on their phone. So just start by going out there and doing it. And by doing it, you're going to learn a heck of a lot. I'm already giving you my takeaways because there were many in this episode. I'll save the rest for after the show. And again, join me in welcoming to What's Your Random, my guest today, Brian Christopher White. Enjoy the random. I will lead the way. So without further ado, I'm introducing my guest today is Brian Christopher White from Out Jogging Pictures. And he is part of a project that was recently successfully filmed on Kickstarter called Lost Found, which is a web series of, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, 7 or 8 episodes, 4-ish episodes each, to culminate into 45 minutes of new, awesome, original content. So Brian, welcome, and use this now as a catapult to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yes, it's as of right now, it's 8 episodes. I'm sure we'll do a slight rewrite before we start production, but as of right now, and they're about 3 to 4 minutes each, so probably about 30, 45 minutes total. So, you know, we don't want to overdo it the first time out.
Very good. So,
go ahead. Do you want me to give us small intro, or I don't
please do? Yeah, by all means.
I'm not good about talking about myself, so I have been making short films for about 20 years now, and so this is like our first web series where we tried to earn a budget and you know, make it as professional looking as possible. But I'm used to, you know, having like 1 or 2 people and no money to work with, and so that's kind of my area of expertise when it comes to making short films. But you know, I started 20 years ago, and here we are today. So
yeah, and I peeped your YouTube channel, Out Jogging Pictures, and you started. I was just occasionally I look down at notes, and I'm fully paying attention, just trying to make sure.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Follow up. 2006, I think, was your first YouTube post, and I kind of tracked the progression of your projects and your posts on YouTube from then to now. I mean, I could kind of hardly believe that it's 14, 15 years later.
I remember like when YouTube like started and someone told me about, hey, there's a website where you can just post videos. I'm like, that's going to be awesome. It's going to be so cool for like independent filmmakers. And then like a month later, it was just cat videos. And I was like, okay, well, and then it, you know, so.
Yeah. But so you're, I mean, you have quite a catalog of videos over those many years, and more recently getting into quite a few short film submissions. So I wonder if you want to talk about, you know, those, you know, and why do a short film on YouTube, and the motivations behind those projects.
Yeah, I kind of like to think of Out Jogging. There's 2 time periods. There's the, you know, 2000 to 2008, 10. That was kind of just a bunch of guys getting together with a Sony Handycam way back when, you know, we still had tapes before all digital and before YouTube. And so it was just us on the weekend making silly stuff. And I think all those videos are still up there, but they're not that good. I'm one of those people where I'll just put anything out. I don't, you know, watch something and not put it out. I just put it out because then you can see how the progression, and hopefully they get better as we go along. But I think kind of the second period of Out Jogging's maybe around 2013. That's when, you know, digital cameras had just come out and film equipment was getting cheaper and easier to get access. And that's when I started meeting new people who actually wanted to go make films rather than just begging my friends to be in them. So, and so the 2013 to now, that's definitely the short film era of Out Jogging. So, why should you make a short film and put it on YouTube? Before
I guess to clarify my intention with that question, I got the sense that some of them were for submissions to certain competitions or projects like that. So that's kind of why I asked that question in that way.
Yeah. And I've met a lot of people, the video production's their business. That's how they pay the bills. And, you can do wedding videography, you can do, all kinds of stuff. And I tried to do weddings and it was so painful and boring. And so for me, I just want to make films, tell a story and make, if I could draw, I would just draw and not do any of this. I would just make graphic novels and be done, but I can't draw. So video is my next thing. And so for me, I just want to make films, tell stories. I don't really, care about video production as a business. It would be nice to make money, but it's not my number one goal. And so I have always wanted to, short films are easy to make rather than a feature film, because that's a whole nother ballgame with money and people and time. And so, but back, in the early 2000s when YouTube and the internet and digital video was coming along, you could make a short film, and if it went viral, you could be, in Hollywood making a blockbuster movie within, the next year. There's a couple of people that happened to. And so the short film was kind of the calling card, your business card into the industry. But then as more and more people and cell phones got better and everybody's making videos, it's like, well, making a short film's nothing. Who cares about that? Anybody can do that now. Now you got to go make a feature film. And so, and now that, streaming's blowing up, everybody's like, well, now we got to go make TV shows or web series. And so that's kind of what we're doing with this web series. It's kind of our calling card to see if we can jumpstart the next one. But for me, the short film or proof of concept, I guess is what they're called. I've always, if you go back and watch, there's a little bit of each film where it could be expanded upon. I think there's only like one short film I made that was just a short film. And that's all I wanted to do with it. But for most of them, I've had larger and bigger ideas if they were to, take off or something like that. So,
yeah. And do you have a favorite amongst the ones that you have up? Is that an unfair question to make you pick your favorite baby?
Well, okay, I have two. I thought Helium, the one, I don't know if you know, that's the one about the balloon that runs around and kills people. That was probably my favorite idea, just because the way I got to that idea, I remember I was sitting at work and I have a notebook where I just write everything down. And for some reason I thought, well, what if Pixar made a horror film? Like what would they do? Because they always take a weird idea and they have a clever spin on it. They take a toy and they make it, come to life and have feelings, or they'll take feelings and make feelings have feelings. And so I'm like, well, if Pixar was to make a horror film, they'd probably just take some kind of inanimate object and make that have some kind of personality. And so, a smiley face balloon, it has a face on it already. It's an inanimate object. And so for me, I think the idea of that film stands out. The production value is, it was during our early stage when we were trying to figure out how to do stuff. But the idea of that one's probably my favorite. And our last film, The Becowing, that's kind of our 20th film. That's probably my most personal film about a man turning into a cow. So that one means a lot to me for different reasons, but those are probably my two favorites right now. So
yeah, and anybody listening, those are available. And I was kind of jumping back and forth between tasks and duties I had today and watching those films, and at least getting watching 5 minutes and getting a feeling for at least each of them. So I would definitely say they're all worth watching for sure.
You're a kind, brave soul if you watch.
No,
if you watched all of them.
I had a fun time checking out Jogging Pictures YouTube. So thank you for preparing me and steering me in the direction with a link in advance. That's always appreciated. If you don't mind going into it at all, I would love to hear the personal reasons why you like Be Cowing most, and about the generation of that story.
Well, that was, it just happened that 2020 was 20 years from when I put my first short film out, and then it just happened that the next one was going to be the 20th. So I didn't plan on it, being 2020 and 2020. And so once I realized that was going to happen, I kind of, made a big deal out of it. But I remember I watched Roma on Netflix. Have you seen that one?
I haven't, but it's a black and white.
Yeah, it's a beautifully shot masterpiece to look at, but I found the story very boring. And so, but I couldn't turn away, because like every frame was it was like a painting or something. It was just so beautiful. And so my kind of sense of humor is to like, not like blatantly make fun of things, but to take like a serious idea and inject humor into it. And so I just thought, well, what if I can make like this beautiful looking black and white film, but just have like the most ridiculous idea, because like Roma I'm not a very big drama person, but I mean, it was a drama series, but it looks spectacular. And so that's kind of where the first twinkling of the story came. And then I thought, okay, well, what serious thing could I do, but then kind of make fun of it, but not like blatantly make fun of it. And so I'm like, okay, well, some guy just like has some kind of disease or something. And I'm like, well, people dying is not really funny. That's, I have a heart. I'm not going to make fun of somebody dying. So then I'm like, well, what if he just has some weird nonsense disease? And for some reason I thought, well, okay, maybe he becomes a cow or something, just something completely unheard of. And then as I started really thinking about it, layers, started coming. So I'm like, okay, well, there's a big obesity epidemic in our country right now. And the term, you are what you eat. So maybe if he just eats a bunch of stuff up front. So like the first minute of the film is just him eating all this food. And so, okay, well, now he's eating it and he's becoming fat and he's becoming a cow. Okay, well, that makes sense, because, sometimes people just make fun of fat people and call them cows. And then, so that was another level. And
I should mention, because I really liked that opening scene for what it was. And I mean, he's eating cow-based products to the point where he eats ice cream out of a cone and then slam dunks the cone into a vase. I mean, so the point wasn't lost on me, and I really appreciated it.
Well, that cow painting's actually in my kitchen. And so for a year, every time I eat breakfast, I was just staring at that cow painting. And so that's probably another like subconscious level of why I wanted it to be about a cow. But, and then really to me, the story is kind of about the insurance company and how it just treats people badly and how expensive everything is. And I've had to deal with it because my daughter, like, I think 2017, she was going through some medical stuff where like we were going to the doctor like every week, and it was like 4 or 5 copays a week. And then every month you get this massive bill, and it's just like, it was too much, and the insurance just wasn't helping at all. And so that's where the personal aspect of the story came. And so that's, you think about it, there's the cow story, which is kind of funny, him becoming a cow. But for me, it's about the insurance company really, and how, they didn't help him. And so that's why in the movie, the doctor, I didn't want the doctor to, necessarily be a good guy or a bad guy, but the doctor's kind of just like borderline. And he's like, oh yeah, we'll give you all these pills and all these pills and all these pills. And he doesn't really think about what he's putting the patient through. And I don't remember the line exactly, but the doctor's kind of like shoves him off. And then, there's the scene where he checks out and the lady hands him this massive stack of bills from the insurance
I think
company.
I know the line. He says, are there any alternative or holistic treatments available for this? And the doctor doesn't even dignify him with an answer.
He gives him a smug look. And
yeah, I think it captures something that probably most everyone who watches that film will relate to and
Right.
appreciate. Well, not appreciate, but you know, they'll relate to it.
Right. And so I guess, that was all the ingredients. And so then I started putting it together, and I really, kind of wanted it to be like an art film. If you've ever been to like the shady theaters in downtown where they show like art films, it's just kind of the most bizarre things you've ever seen. And so I purposely made like each scene like kind of flat. The camera doesn't like move around much. It pans and tilts, but it doesn't, go in or out. And so I kind of made it weird to begin with. A lot of people kind of don't like the cinematography of it, but I when I originally sat down to write the script, I wrote a director's statement and said, okay, this is going to be kind of flat acting. The camera never really, moves around. It's just all flat, black and white, and it kind of reflects just the mundaneness of society. And so I guess I could go on, but
No, that's what we're here for. Please do. Yeah.
So, but and then at the end, I don't if you didn't watch the ending, that's fine. But he walks out to the cow pasture, and it turns to color. So it goes from black and white to bright blue skies, green fields, and cows. And so that's kind of I guess the reverse like Wizard of Oz effect. And so I just I thought it would all these ministry them off of stocks and drug stuff, and so that's kind of over the color scene, and so kind of yeah, I don't if that makes sense at all. It's sometimes absolutely. It's hard to explain my ideas and
no, I think, and I had I might have frozen for a second if I had a dull look on my face. I lost you for a second, but
I'm used to that look. So
I captured. Yeah, I think we missed only a piece of it, but you were talking about the return or the transition to color, and then some overlaying of thematic imagery relating to drugs, like medicine and insurance and whatnot. But I think your comment about that's the way people look, it's hard to explain these ideas. I think that's why probably you decide to express them through the medium of video to some degree, or at least something with images. You mentioned comics would also serve a similar purpose.
Well, I found that like with video, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words and a video's worth, whatever. But like with video, there's so much manipulation because you can make a scene, and even depending on what kind of music you throw over it, it's either you can make it the same exact scene, you can make it a happy scene, you can make it a horror scene, you can make it a sad scene just by changing the music. And so like with video, for me, there's so much of I can write a script, we can go film it, but it's not until I start like editing it and putting it together that like that's where the movie starts to take shape and really I get a sense, okay, well, this is exactly what we're supposed to be telling here, because, anybody can write words on paper and tell a story, and you can go film a whole bunch of stuff, but that's, to me, that's not a movie. It's not until you get in and start, technically, I guess, sculpting it in the editing room. And so, with video, there's so many different ways to like manipulate your audience and get them to feel how you want them to feel. Because you can go to like an art museum and everybody can stare at the one painting and everybody can have a different opinion on what that painting means. And that's kind of how I want my films to be, because I don't really tell exactly, what happens in the stories. Like I kind of want to leave most of them open-ended so people can just kind of think about it themselves. Most people just don't care and don't think about it at all, but I intentionally want them to make up their own idea as to what exactly happened. So like him walking out into the cow field when it's all of a sudden colors. Okay, is he dead? Is it, is it a happy ending? And I remember telling my composer, like the type of music, I'm like, I want people to either laugh or cry, but I want them to not know what to do. Like if they're laughing, Yeah, like if they're laughing, it's because it's these sad real life facts about the medical industry. But then if they're crying, it's like, well, it's all happy and colorful, and he's walking out, and so it's like they can make up their own minds. But I want them to purposely kind of be like, should I be laughing at this? Should we be crying? Like, is this funny? Is this sad? So it's up to them. So that's kind of what I enjoy about films is like, yes, you can manipulate and tell them what to do, but also like let them kind of figure it out for themselves, I guess.
What are you mentioned, having these tools in your arsenal to manipulate the audience and steer them in certain directions, even if that direction may be slightly ambiguous, like you just said. What are those tools, maybe in some sort of ranking order for you to sway the audience in a direction one way or the other? In the editing room or even beforehand.
Well, I know like on set, how you move the camera, that definitely says a lot, because you could focus on one object and focus on another. So whatever you're focused on, that's you're telling the audience, okay, look at this, this is important, especially if, like, the background's out of focus and one thing in the foreground's in focus. So that's a way to manipulate the audience to focus in on something. And depending on how you move the camera or certain shots. I mean, Steven Spielberg's a master at moving the camera and making you feel one way just by movement. And then in post-production, the music is definitely very important to me. I spend a lot of time with sound effects, sound design, and the music. And I've worked a lot with David Zagardo. He's the composer who did my last 3 films, and I enjoy his work very much. Just design, you can make, a door. It could be a really creepy door. It could just be a new door. It could be like a, kind of like a sci-fi door, just by whatever kind of sound effect you put on it. And so sound is definitely a big part of it for me. I know some people, they care about the image more, and some people care about the sound. And especially when you're dealing with internet video, it's, you can have a gorgeous looking video, but if the sound's horrible, nobody's going to watch it. But you can have a slightly horrible looking video, but if the sound's great, they're still going to watch it. Because people are so used to different, streaming and buffering data rates and all. So I definitely spend more time in sound than the actual post-production look of the video. And so that's I guess my 3 go-to tools is on set, how we move the camera, and then sound and music is definitely good manipulation tools.
And I didn't want to steer you in any direction, but you kind of answered with the answer I somewhat expected, because I did get a sense of many layers of sound effects and, very specific scoring, down to the motion and the movement and the cut. So it makes sense to hear that you're working with a composer who's making original music, I suppose, for, some of the pieces that you've put together.
Yes, he goes by David the Goliath. He's like 9 feet tall, and he's really good. I'll send you a link if you want to link his website or something. He'll be happy to for some promotion. So we met up. I think Part was the first thing we worked on, and I just met him through Facebook, and we were filming. He came down to the set, and so it's weird working on Facebook with, there's so many film groups or whatever, and you kind of think people because you spend so much time in the chat room chatting with them, but then you realize, oh, I don't know these people at all. I've never really met them. There's one guy I've tried to work with. He was supposed to be in helium, but somehow his schedule got mixed up, so he couldn't come down to the set, and so I got him to do a voiceover part for later, and so I've never actually met him, but we worked that way, and then we know people who have known people who've worked with, but the 2 of us have never actually worked together. And so it's crazy that once you start to realize the network and how close it is, it's you kind of know people, but you don't really know people. And so
and is that just local where you are? You work on local film groups, or for anybody who's listening who wants to get into some indie production, what would you recommend?
Yeah,
that was another question I had. How do you network, and how do you I mean, I would say with Facebook and stuff, it's kind of easy to network, but how do you navigate networking, meaning how do you make sure that you're networking in the right ways?
Right. Well, I know before Facebook, it was just Craigslist. You put out a shady ad on Craigslist and hope they don't come murder you when they show up to set.
I've done that before,
but yeah,
2007 or so, and I had a lot of success in New York City. And yeah, I'm here to say that I survived to tell the tale.
Yeah. Yeah, anytime I did Craigslist, I tried to meet in Walmart where they had security cameras just in case something went wrong. My family would know what had happened. So. But I think, say what you will about Facebook. Some people love it, some people hate it. It's probably the easiest because you can, there's like general like low budget film groups, and then you can I'm sure whatever state you're living in, you could find a state like a Georgia film group or a Tennessee film group, and where I'm at, there's at least like 4 local groups within an hour of each other that we're part of. And then there's like a state group, and then there's like the North State and the South State. So there's a lot of groups, and you just kind of got to get a feel for who does what. And, once you start to realize who the people are, you'll see them in other groups, and you can kind of, vet them out and make sure they're legit before you work with them. But I've been lucky enough to not have any bad experiences with meeting people from many of these groups. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. And so. I saw that you had a reoccurring actor, at least I didn't write down the woman's name, but Ricky Jordan II, if I'm saying his name right. He's in at least 3 of your films, and he'll also be the star in Lost Found, the upcoming web series. So I'm, just curious if you also found him via Facebook. And just to add on to a pile-on question, how did you meet with Rachel H. Farrell, who's the writer of the web series?
All right. Well, Ricky, I met him through Facebook. We were doing Helium, and Helium was kind of our first big. It was me and Sean Wells. We worked together at a TV station, and that's where we met and realized that, hey, we both like films. We should start, getting together. And so Helium, we had made, I think, like 1 or 2 just short films to kind of test stuff with cameras and microphones. And so Helium was kind of our big, all right, let's go out and purposely make a film. And so I put out a big casting. I sent it to Atlanta because, Atlanta just kind of blew up and became Hollywood #2. And so I got a bunch of people from over there that were interested. And most people, once they realized that there wasn't a whole lot of money involved, they stopped. And so it got down to maybe like 2 or 3 people. And Ricky was the last one, and he sent in an audition. And I'd never met him before, and we talked online, and I really liked what he was doing. And so he came down, and we made Helium. And I don't know if I've ever told him this story, but after we finished, I was cleaning everything up. This was like weeks later, and I found a box of like the props and stuff that we had on set, and there was a script, and it had a whole bunch of like notes and things. I'm like, oh, that's not my script. And so I started reading it, and Ricky had written down all his character notes and how he would feel and do all this, extra homework. And for me, for the type of short film that it was, and the fact that, there wasn't any pay hardly involved, that, a complete stranger would take it so seriously that he would, sit down and write out all these notes for this character, about a film, a balloon that kills people. To begin with, it's just kind of a ridiculous idea, but he took it very seriously. And I saw that script, and that impressed me a lot. And so that's when I sat down and wrote Part. I specifically wrote Part with him in mind. Like I wanted him to be that character. And so that's kind of how our relationship evolved. And so I don't know if he knew that story. So Ricky, if you watch this, that's why I called you back. You impressed me. And so, I like to use the same people over one because, obviously if I enjoy working with you, I want to work with you again. And it's easier for me to, work with other people because with films often, you don't have a lot of time to prepare. For most of the time, it's, you get the set, you rehearse, you film it, and you go on. And so it's gotta, you move fast, and if you have an attitude or ego that gets in the way, you're slowing us down. And so if you already know how people work and what to expect, it just makes the whole process easier. And so working with the same people over and over again speeds that up, and you know exactly what to expect, how they work, what they're feeling. Like you can see the look on their face and know what they're thinking, and know how to act and react. And so that's why I like to use the same people. And obviously where I live, there's not a whole lot to choose from. And so,
Where are
I
you
kind of
again?
got to use the same people, but I'm in the South, kind of, like Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and that triangle of
Gotcha.
states. So, there's Georgia, there's a big Hollywood scene, but like I said, they're not very open to doing low budget stuff. And like North Alabama, they're trying. I know a lot of films have been filmed in Birmingham, but down kind of where we're at, there's not a whole lot. People will travel, but you spend most of your budget on hotel rooms in at that point. So and then for me, there's a lot of indie do-it-yourself low budget short films where they'll write a script, and then they just got to go find an actor to be the character. And you can tell, I'm not saying it's a bad actor, it's just that they're not that character. And so for me, if I use the same character or actor again, I can write a character for that person because I know what their acting strengths are. And so like for the Becowing with Shane, he was in a previous short film, Circles. And so when I was writing the Becowing, I thought, okay, well, Shane would be very good at this part because I saw what he could do. I saw his range in Circles. And so when I wrote the Becowing, I didn't write anything that I knew he couldn't do, which would force him to, either act out of his comfort zone or something he couldn't do. And then that's kind of where you get the bad acting from a lot of these films, is because people are trying to do something that, they can't, and all they had to work with was their uncle or cousin or something. And so if you use the same people, you understand exactly what you can and can't do. It's kind of like locations. Don't write a script if you don't have the location. Use the locations you have and write your script around that, and write your script around the actors you have available. And I've had more success, I guess, with that than not.
Yeah, I appreciate. I was going to ask actually if that the brick building location that I saw. I felt like I saw the same brick building location in a few of your films. Is that right?
If you're talking about part, that was the town over, and that was the first time I used a location manager. Another going back to the how to find people, most states have a film office, and most film offices have a Facebook page. And so when I was doing part, I contacted the local film office and told them what I was doing and what I was looking for. And then they contacted me with some other people. And that's how I found the location manager, and he found the set for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's, if you're out there and want to make films, I contact your film office and see what they have available. They know people, and they'll probably be happy to help. And I think that was your question. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, I was curious because I thought the locations were pretty cool, and I wondered how you, especially for the Becowing, I think there's a scene where he comes out of the doctor's office, and I guess it might have been done in post-production, but there's some advertisement with a cow on it behind them.
That was not done in post-production.
Okay. There we go.
It just happened that that location's like on my way to work, and so I knew that would be an empty parking lot. I didn't realize the billboard with the steakhouse was there until afterwards. I'm like, I couldn't have written it. Yeah, like I couldn't have written that better, that he's, selling his car underneath a steakhouse billboard. It was just like, it's one of those things where like the more you sit back and think about it, it becomes its own like thing, I guess. So it just happened to work out that way. But yeah, I tend to write around the locations within my area. And so most of my films are, within 30 minutes of where I am. And once again, I have access to them to begin with, and so I can write the scene around it. So,
yeah, that's kind of in my mind right now, tying in this concept I've discussed with previous guests, which is sometimes to facilitate for the most creativity, it's best to create and have some borders and boundaries, because then you are not overwhelmed by infinite possibility. And then also the impossibility of if you wanted to shoot in downtown Los Angeles in a skyscraper or something like that, right? So you mentioning this, some people might say, oh, he should really write what he wants to write and this and that. But maybe by defining these boundaries, you are actually able to focus on, what really matters, which is the story, and add these layers of depth that you kind of, we're talking about for the becowing.
Yeah. A lot of filmmaking, especially on set, is just problem solving, figuring. They say, you can plan out everything, make your shot list, and as soon as you get on set, just throw it all away because nothing's going to go right. Because going back to Park, we found the location. I went and I scouted it out. It was great. There's nobody around because it's supposed to be like kind of in the middle of nowhere. The town's abandoned and there's nobody around him. And so we went and we shot on a Monday and Tuesday. And the location manager failed to say that every Monday the city comes out and mows the lawn around the whole place. And so we're sitting up, we're getting ready to shoot, and then all of a sudden all these lawnmowers and weed eaters come out for an hour, and we're like, well, what do? We can't do anything. And then I think the second day, this huge train came by because there was a train yard just off to the left of the camera, and it's like, what do we do now? It's just, so it was, yeah, like I said up at the top, like I'm used to, not having any budget to work with. So not having a lot to work with, I think has improved my films because you kind of go, okay, well, this is what we have. How do we make this the best that it can be rather than, here's $200 million, go make a movie in front of a giant green screen or LCD wall where you can just have whatever you want. And so I find that limitations enhance movies a lot rather than just saying, here's whatever you want, go make a film. Because you look at Jaws, the only reason Jaws was so good was because he couldn't show the shark because the shark didn't work. And so he had to, when the shark didn't work, he had to go, okay, well, how do we make this movie with a shark that doesn't work? And so that's, it's a lot scarier when those barrels pop up and you don't see the shark rather than just seeing a shark. And so when things don't work or you're very limited, I think that's how you get the best out of it, because you just, how do we make this as best as it can be rather than, oh, I have all this to work with, let me just do whatever I want.
Right. And
not to say I don't like $200 million blockbusters, but I like it when, they have some limitations. So,
yeah. And I think you described the difference between Jaws and Sharknado, maybe.
Yeah.
I think using what I try to realize if I'm struggling and getting frustrated with a limitation or a challenge in front of me, I just have to always constantly remind myself that problem solving to overcome these challenges is part of the creative process. You could be creative in the way that you, overcome challenges. And in the case of the example of Jaws, like you just said, it ended up resulting in a much better product because the suggestion of fear was much more fearsome than the actual presentation of the shark.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It let the audience imagine it before just flat out showing it. Now, there is the opposite effect. Like with helium, the balloon just didn't work and half the shots were just horrible. And that playground, I don't know if you got to the playground fight in the movie, but he was supposed to fight the balloon.
Punching the balloon.
Yeah, he was supposed to fight them on the playground, but we showed up and it was just a torrential downpour. But the rain would come and go every 5 minutes, and so we get to the playground, and then there's this horrible stock footage of rain that I had to throw in there because the rain was so inconsistent from when we were filming. It was either pouring or it was nothing, and I couldn't get the shots to match up. So I just had to pick this horrible B-roll footage of this rain cloud coming in. It's just the whole day was spent. But the camera had to go back. So it was either we film it or we just don't do it at all. And so we just took a trash bag, threw it over the camera. You couldn't see. I had no idea if the whole scene was in focus or not. And I just told Alan, take this balloon and do the best you can, and we'll get through. And so what was on film is what we got. So, there's good and bad with limitations. You either get Jaws or you get helium. But
when you're on a budget and you have to return that camera, that's a limitation. Yeah. Maybe very few creative solutions will help overcome. I was curious because, there's an obvious progression in the quality of the shorts and the videos that you've been producing and releasing. And I watched the, BTS for Parked just to see, you have time-lapse footage of you guys filming it from a distance with a GoPro or something like that. And, I was impressed with the level of quality you're able to achieve, considering all of the restraints, budget and time and things like that we discussed before, but also personnel-wise. So, I wonder if you could talk about how you've evolved to achieve such a level of quality over time. What are your tools in your toolbox that you've kind of accumulated, skill-wise or actual physical tools?
Well, like I said, I have been doing this for 20 years, and so it's been a slow progression. And I'll buy a piece of gear and use it. And nowadays, yes, there's a lot of cheap filmmaking gear out there, but it is cheap, and the chances of you having to rebuy that in a couple of years is very great and high. And so I've kind of learned that instead of just buying a cheap piece of gear, just save up and get the good thing, because really the only difference between cheap camera gear and expensive camera gear is the expensive stuff is going to be a lot easier to use. It's going to be faster to use, and it's going to last. Whereas the cheap gear, yes, the light may be cheap, but you can't, diffuse it or something like that. And you're going to have a much difficult time getting that one cheap light to look how you want the expensive light to look within, a matter of seconds. And same thing with like a lav mic or a boom mic. Yes, the cheap lav mic, it may work, but it's going to have a lot of sound and noise that you're going to have to take out in post-production. Whereas an expensive mic, it's going to sound a lot better on set and less post-production work. So it's going to save you time in the long run. And I know right now with cameras, most, it's kind of a inside joke that all indie filmmakers just care about the camera and whatever the latest, greatest camera is and how the camera looks. And there's a big thing about, well, you can just shoot it with a camera phone and it looks fine. Yes, you can just shoot it with a camera phone. A lot of people have done that. There's been a couple Hollywood movies shot with a camera phone, but they probably have like a $10,000 audio setup, and they've got a crew of 20 and high-powered lights and diffusions. But yes, the camera was a camera phone. And so there's this kind of misconception that if you just take a cell phone and go out and shoot something, it's going to look great. No, it's going to sound bad. It's going to sound bad. It's going to be properly lit and, underexposed. So, but yeah, yes, you can shoot it with your camera, your cell phone. And so for me, like over the years, it's just kind of, seeing what gear works and slowly saving up to get the better stuff. Like with Parked was the first time that I got a really good boom mic, because I knew we were going to be outside and I didn't have any lavalier mics, and I knew it was just going to be two people. And so, I researched for about a month what was the best boom mic you could get for being outside, because even microphones, there's good ones for outside, there's good ones for inside, there's good ones for, a lot of people or just one person. And so I spent a lot of time to research that. And the thing with gear is it's just like phones. There's a new one that comes out every year, and there's some people who just want the latest and greatest. So if you go on eBay, you can find a whole bunch of old gear that still works and is really good for really cheap. And so I went and I bought a really good boom mic, but for really cheap on eBay, because, it's not the latest and greatest, but it still works. And so that's what I did for Parked. And camera wise, our camera has slowly progressed. I'm a big fan of Blackmagic design. They're kind of They're based in Australia, and they're kind of like I don't want to say cheap. They're not cheap by any means, but they're like the indie filmmaker company. They purposely make cameras that are relatively cheap that look really well. The image quality is really good, and they do that for the indie people who can't afford the really, $40,000 Alexa cameras. And so I've been very happy with what we've done. I think Helium was our first time using one of their cameras, and every other film has been on some form of Blackmagic camera. And so I admire the company for what they're doing, and like their editing software is called DaVinci Resolve, and before it was like a $500 program, but they've released a free program for it, so anybody can go download it and start editing. And it's I enjoy it a lot, and so I like a company that knows and supports the indie scene rather than just selling the high end gear and to the people who can afford it. And then skill wise, it just takes practice. You for me, it's you got to go make stuff. Just make stuff. It's going to be bad. It's going to be horrible, but just make it. I know people who made South Park. Their motto was just quantity over quality. Just go make a whole bunch of stuff, and eventually it'll start getting better. But the more you make, the more you realize how to do things, how to change it, how to make things better. Because there's so many people who will write $100 million script as their first feature film, and they won't go make it because they can't find the money, or they don't have the best camera to make it with, rather than just go make a cheap movie. Yeah, it's going to suck, but put it out there and see what people think, and then learn from it. When I watch my stuff, every time I start a new script, I'll go back and watch all the old things just to go, okay, well, that shot worked, that one didn't. So how can I make that shot better in the next one? What do I need to do differently? What can I use? How can I make it better? And so, that's why I just throw everything out there so I can see the progression. And like I said, hopefully it's getting better. And so, yeah, it's just go make stuff. It's gonna suck at first. It's gonna be bad, but at least you're making it.
Yeah. So before you started out jogging, what is your progression into this field? You could start from when you're 1 year old or a 2-year-old. What was your inspiration? And I think I remember reading that you went to a art university.
It was the Art Institute of Atlanta.
Yeah, so the progression, from when you were a kid through to now would be really interesting.
I was always one of those kids who just like to take things apart, see how they worked. Like I would, take apart a radio just to figure it out, or I'd take apart some toys just to figure out how the missile shoots and then put them back together, or I'd, combine them to make some other big robot. But me and my friend, we would always, I think the Muppet Christmas special was big that one year. And so we decided to go down our basement and just make a whole bunch of puppets and make our own little Muppet Christmas. Or we would go make a Indiana Jones stunt show in the woods or something. We were always like making our own little performance thing. And so I was always kind of into that. And I remember there was a VHS of how they made Star Wars and a VHS of how they did the Ninja Turtle movies. And I would always watch those two VHSs more than the actual Star Wars or Ninja Turtle movies, because I wanted to know how it was made and how they did it and what they use. And so I guess that's kind of where it started for me, just wanting to know how they made movies and did stuff. And eventually I got the old Sony Handycam that everybody had back in the day, and just started making goofy things. And I finally got a computer where I could plug it in, and it had like a editing thing. And so I just I think I started making like music videos for just like popular songs on the radio that were just dumb, but I was learning how to edit and put things together. And then when I went to the Art Institute, I actually went there for web design, because at the time, the only real place to make a living was in California, and Atlanta had no video whatsoever. And now they've blown up and they're Hollywood #2. But I did take an After Effects class when I was at the Art Institute, and that was like, special effects and post-production, and I enjoyed working with that. And so that was kind of mirroring my two worlds. And so that's definitely when I started realizing, okay, I can kind of do this now. I know how to edit, and I know how to use After Effects and make explosions and things do that. And so I finally saved up enough money. I went to Circuit City and just bought my own little camera, and got my friends together, and we just started making goofy videos on the weekends when we were bored. And so that's kind of snowballed after that. So
yeah, is it I guess, how does it continue to snowball? Is there ever a point where you're like, what am I doing?
Every time, without fail, it's like, why am I doing this? What have I done with my life? I just want to sell everything and go. It's,
what brings you back?
Well, the first cut of your movie is the worst thing humanly possible, and it's where you just want to give it all up. And really, for me, it's not till I start adding music to the edits. It's like, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought. And there's a period in between like 2006 and 2013 where I didn't do a whole lot. And if you go back and watch the timestamp of our 20 short films, there's a good chunk missing. And for me, it's being creative. If I go a couple months without creating something, whether it's writing or creating a character, or creating a story, or making something, I just start to feel bad. There's something about it where I can tell that something's off, and I'm not doing something. It's kind of like a woodworker. If they're not making something with their hands, or they're not doing something, I get antsy. And so it's like I have to keep doing it, whether it's just writing a character down in my notebook, or just a simple story. I don't have to actually make it, but I've got to just at some point sit down and write something out to where I feel this pressure released or whatever.
I very much relate, like 100%. Yeah, you're not alone, and I imagine people listening create other creatives feel the same way.
It's just the weirdest feeling. I can't really describe it to people who don't create, and I know a lot of people look at you weird, like, what are you talking about? But it's something that you just have to make something. And so
yeah. I mean, I had one friend who he's a winemaker and in Germany, and speaking with him about winemaking, he's talked about it in a way that indicates to me that drinking it is some form of art, to be able, or appreciation of art, but then making it is the actual art, right? There's the appreciation of the art, watching a movie, drinking the wine, but making the wine is an art form. And so I asked him if he wanted to come on my podcast, and he's like, you have a podcast? And are you buying time on Amazon or something? Like, you're doing all these random creative endeavors. Where do you find the time? But it's similar to you, maybe somebody else would be, and it's not to say I don't watch Netflix, but maybe somebody else would be watching Netflix right now, instead of doing this. But I'm having a blast, if you can't tell. And I fully relate to relieving that pressure. And sometimes I ignore it, or I pretend like I don't need to relieve that pressure. And inevitably, because it's also tiring sometimes to just constantly be producing and wanting to produce, feeling like I'm always falling behind and never able to catch up with myself and my own ambitions. But if I say, okay, I don't need to create anymore, that pressure will build. And I've learned that over time.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll get stuck on, the return on investment, because like with short films, you can't make any money. And, our YouTube views are less than 1,000 on almost everything. So it's a lot of it's just mainly for me. Like, I'll make a movie that I know I want to watch, and it's satisfying that I made something, and I'll go back and watch them. I know a lot of people won't watch the stuff they make or the stuff they're in, but I have no shame in watching my stuff, because, I made it because it's kind of story I want to watch. And so I'll go back and watch my stuff. And sometimes it gets discouraging knowing that, I just, like for the Bacowing, because we didn't shoot it all at once. It took us about a year to make. And and I really felt a personal connection to the story, and we spent all that time making it, and then, not a whole lot of people saw it. And so it's like, did I just waste like an entire year of my life doing this? But then, that feeling fades, and then I go make something else. So it's, there's a push and pull from wanting and needing to make something versus, okay, well, why am I doing this? Because no one cares. That's the beauty.
The beautiful thing, and you're gonna describe another beautiful thing once I shut my yapper. But the beautiful thing about YouTube is that maybe only a handful of people saw it up to this point, but it's out there for people listening, and people in 10 years maybe rediscovering this, or just going to your YouTube page when you do a slam dunk, that they could be like, oh, this was his progression, and I really like the becowing.
Yeah, I hope so.
And even if not, I mean, for me, it was refreshing, and I appreciated all of the layers even before talking to you.
Thank you.
I think it's awesome to see that sort of progression and layers in storytelling and the level of professionalism that you bring to it. And I had a totally no experience. I wrote a script and I really wanted to film it, and I was about to go to Japan to teach English for a year. And I just decided this is 2008 or so. No, 2009 or 10. I decided I need to do this movie before I go to Japan, because I'm not sure exactly when I'm coming back. And I filmed a feature-length film knowing very little about anything. And I have the similar feelings about that film. Looking back, it took me so long to edit through it. There were so many problems that I encountered in the editing process. And it was me wearing a lot of hats that didn't quite fit. And I had to pull them until they stretched and got onto my head. And I knew, better what I was doing and how to manage the situation. And now I released it. And like you said, I very much agree that, that wasn't the level of quality I wanted it to be at, but how could I expect it to be at any level of quality higher, considering I didn't really know what I was doing? And I learned a heck of a lot through the process of wearing all of those hats and forcing them onto my head.
There's a point where I just had to stop comparing my work to other people's work, because it's like, okay, I know how they made it and what they had to work with, and I know how I made mine and what I had to work with. And so it's like, I'm good with this, because with what we had to work with, this was the best I could do. If I had that and it still looked like this, then then there's something wrong. And so it's, once I realized to stop comparing all my videos with another one, I started to, feel better. And then I could see the progression of each one. And so it's taken a lot in the last 20 years to realize that, every artist feels the same way, and that they're not good enough. And yes, they may be more successful, and yes, they're way better, but that's the beauty about art. One little thing can set you off from everybody else, and somebody will, going back to the art museum, one painting, 10 different opinions. And so it's, you never know what someone's going to think. And even trying to get into Hollywood, nobody in Hollywood knows anything. Nobody knows, this person could hate your script, this person could love it. And it's just, there's no right or wrong. It's just the luck of the draw,
Yeah. And how do you, so you said sometimes you'll go back and refresh and rewatch your old stuff. And has your perspective sitting in that seat as an audience to your own creative work, has your perspective in that seat changed over the years? Were you more critical earlier? Have you changed your mindset? And because for me, and the perspective from which I'm asking this question is, I made a 90-minute movie, and I edited the whole thing too. and I'm really kind of tired of watching it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my girlfriend recently asked if we could watch it because she hadn't seen it yet. And I said, yeah, I think I'm due for a viewing, but I always feel some trepidation when I go into rewatching it because I know I've improved my perspective on it, but I'm still going to nitpick this and that maybe I'll go back and actually edit that and re-release it,
Right.
Stuff like that. So I wonder your perspective over time, viewing your own works.
Yeah, you definitely pick out the flaws a lot more now, and especially with the production quality between Helium and our last one, it's it's night and day now because the gear got better or we learned more. But I try, like, once again, I try not to be too critical. It's like, this is what we had and this is what I could do with it. And if I could remake it, like with Circles, I did shoot the first one on a camera phone. And then this year I went and kind of redid it with better stuff. And to me, it's like, oh, this is night and day. This is exactly what I wanted. Not to say that the first one was still crap. I can still find something good out of that first one because there's, it was longer and there was more character development. But just for me personally, it's like I finally felt like, okay, that the new one is definitely what I wanted to get out of it. But I try not to be too critical on past stuff, but I can definitely pick out every flaw. Nobody has to tell me what's wrong with it. I know. Trust me.
That's funny. I'm wondering too about, we're talking about lighting and the quality of the equipment and stuff like that. And obviously using the Blackmagic cameras is a big boost for the level of image that you're able to capture. I was wondering how much of what you do to get the look that you achieved in your last 10 or so films is done in post-production, and how much work goes in on that end to correct lighting and color correction, and how many passes are you doing on one scene to make sure the light is where you want it on background, foreground, something dark for something light.
I mean, lighting, really, it's something you got to get on set, and that just over the years watching countless lighting tutorials on YouTube and finally getting better lights and learning how to diffuse them properly. Like, I mean, you could go buy a $500 diffusion panel or go buy a $5 shower curtain at Walmart, just as long as you know how to use it and manipulate the light. And so, sound and lighting, then camera are probably how Hollywood images look like Hollywood images versus do it yourself. And, you can tell bad lighting versus good lighting, but lighting is definitely one of those things you just got to do on set. It doesn't matter how much post-production work you get. If it's bad lighting, it's going to be bad lighting. And that, that's just practice. Just like I said, go out and make something and make a bunch of bad lighting, realize why it's bad and how to change it and how to make it better. But color correcting and color grading, that's definitely post-production. And that's a whole nother beast, like learning how to do that correctly. And in the beginning, it was just, all right, I'm going to put this color effect on it and, oh, it looks great. But once you realize how they do it and how to manipulate things and you use different color layers and stuff, that's where it really stands out. But it's like with film, there's like one person who's really good with sound. There's one person who's really good with light. There's one person who's really good with color, and there's one person who's good with the camera. If you have enough people and have enough money to, get the whole team together, it's going to make a whole, better film. If you don't have the whole team and you are just a one-man person, then, it is possible to do it all. But it's definitely, if you can find one person who's good at that one thing, then that's definitely going to, like for me, within our last 3 films, is like I've handed the music over to David and he's just done it. I haven't touched it. And, like on Part, Sean ran the camera. I never touched the camera. And, like with our web series coming out, we've got somebody who's going to color. We've got somebody who's going to do the music. We finally have money to like hire each individual person. So I'm hoping it doesn't look like anything else we've done. I'm hoping it looks a lot better. But it's kind of weird, like when you finally get money and it's like, I don't know what to do with this. I've never had it. And so this is definitely a whole new experience for us. And so we're working out our budget and making sure we're using every penny to the best ability that we can. So, but yeah, it just takes a while and a lot of practice to get every little thing done. But there's so many tutorials on YouTube. There's just no point in going to film school. Like it's all out there and you can find it, and there's a lot of good ones and there's a lot of bad ones. But
yeah, I took a short, like 2 or 3 week film course, and when I took it, I was like, well, I'm just kind of relearning or reinforcing what I learned through the course of making my film.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot to be said about learning by doing and trial and error. And I think that's why it's really important, your message about just make something. Just get out there and do it.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's so many books you can read, but at some point it's like they're just going to start repeating themselves. And it's like, well, okay, you've read enough books. Now go.
Yeah, nobody can do it for you.
Yeah, yeah.
What is your strength out of, you're talking about being a, indie short film producer, filmmaker as a generic term usually means to me that somebody's wearing a decent amount of hats.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you tout superiority in strength in one area over another in your own profile.
Yeah, like I said, I don't really like to talk about myself, and I've done so many jobs before, not because I have to do it all. It's just out of necessity because I didn't have people to do it. But like Lost and Found, Rachel wrote it. This is the first thing I've done that I haven't written. I usually write all my stuff, and so she's doing the writing. Sean, he's going to do the camera. We're going to have somebody do the lights. We'll have somebody to do the post work. And so for me, this will be the first one where I just direct it and I just sit down with the actors and kind of just do one thing. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that and seeing how, if that's, if I enjoy just doing the one thing, or if I do I kind of need to do more than one. So we'll see how that works. But, I've been told that my writing style is very unique and clever. And so I guess if I had to just pick one thing, I hate the process of sitting down at the computer and writing. I love the coming up with characters and ideas and things like that. But the actual physical act of writing, I hate so much.
How do you get yourself to do it? Is there any, do you put on some music to set the mood, or is there any practice that you've established to get you to do that thing that you don't really love doing, but is necessary to release these characters in your head into the world?
Giving myself a deadline definitely helps. And then, finding some sort of soundtrack that's similar to the movie. I know with the Bacallian, I listened to a lot of Michael Giacchino because he was the style of music. When I did Part, I pretty much just listened to the Stranger Things soundtrack over and over because it was that weird, creepy vibe. And so, yeah, definitely there'll be periods where I'm like, all right, I can do this, and I'll write 10 pages a day. And then there's like 2 weeks where I just stare at the cursor. It's like, okay, well, this is going nowhere. And there are some writers who have to have everything outlined and bit by bit before they can sit down and start writing. And for me, I find it easier if I can just sit down almost with like a blank slate and just start typing and just like throwing out ideas. And then once I have enough, I can kind of sit back and go, okay, well, here's the story. Let's move this here. Let's move that there. Let's move this here. And then once I have a good chunk, I'll just, I'll sit down and write that chunk, and it's kind of almost already written. That way I'm not just hunkered down staring at a blinking cursor. So
I think our brains might work in a slightly similar way. I could really relate to your description of the generation of ideas, and then the way that you sit back and
like things. Just getting that first draft out's the hardest, and then once I have that, then I can go, okay, well, here's my story. Let's just do this. And the second draft is way easier than the first. So
What is that drafting process like from the first to the second for you?
It really depends, really on the story, I guess. The first draft, I try not to restrict myself as far as like, locations or budget or characters. Like I still have an idea of where I can go and who I can use, but I try not to restrict myself too much. And so the first draft, I just let it go and just kind of let the story write itself to see where it goes. And then the second draft, when I go, okay, well, I have this location. How many of these scenes can we put here? And I have this many people to work with. So maybe let's take this out or combine these two characters. Now I'm kind of at the point now with my notebook that I've had for, 10 plus years. I've got all these story ideas and I know I'm never going to get to. So now I'm just kind of combining them into, one or two stories. Like, okay, I can take these 10 and I can probably make at least 3 more short films out of this. I can do that rather than make 10 short films. And so now I'm just combining things and seeing where what I can actually make versus just keep going with ideas and stuff. So, and I try not to be that person who makes, draft after draft after draft, because eventually you can sit down and just change stuff all you want. And like with the edit, you can sit there and make that scene however you want for so many times, but eventually you just gotta walk away and be done with it. And so I try not to do too many drafts before I send it to somebody just to get feedback. And then once I get feedback, then I can see what somebody else thinks about it. And then I go, okay, I kind of see where they're going. Maybe I can do 1 or 2 more. So.
Nice. Yeah. And do you have a couple of stories on your shelf that you could pull from at any given moment if you want to do a project, in terms of like at least a skeleton or even a full written story? Or do you really just have a general synopsis and then you write a story from that when you want to work on a project?
I don't have a whole story. Like I probably have about 5 right now in my notebook, at least, like laid out as far as like the character progression in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. But I'm kind of lazy. Like I said, I don't like writing, so I don't write unless I absolutely have to, I guess. And so if I don't think the story's going to go anywhere anytime soon, I'll make sure I have enough there so when I do come back to it, I can remember where I was going with it.
The skeleton is there and you could come back and slap skin on the bones.
There's so many earlier notes in my notebook where I'll go back and like, I have no idea what this means.
Yeah, me too.
Like I don't. So I know if I don't write it down and at least make some sort of blueprint to come back to, then it's pointless to even go. So
it's like the bird is blue and then car. And it's like,
it's like, what
was I thinking?
I'm sure at the time that was funny, but I don't know what that means.
Genius. And how did you meet Rachel?
She is actually my sister-in-law through marriage. So my wife and her brother, and then she's married to my wife's brother. So, and we've known each other for 12 years now, but we've never like kind of like, she's always done her writing thing and I've always done my film stuff. And now we finally kind of go, hey, we should just get together and do this. Why haven't we done this before? And
was there something to catalyze that coming together?
I think we've gotten to the point. It's like, this is going nowhere. Like I don't know what else to do here. Let's just try something and see how it works. And I remember she had this idea for this web series, and she sent me the script for it. And I was writing something, and so I stopped to write it, and I read her script, and I thought that it was so good that I just deleted whatever I was writing and just deleted it completely and never came back to it, because I was like, this is what she did with this script was way better than anything I'm coming up with. And so I was like super jealous.
The bluebird in the car didn't fly.
There's no way this is just completely dumb compared to what she written here. And so it's definitely our style of storytelling. Like you could watch this web series and watch our old stuff and definitely tell that it mirrors each other very well. So I'm really happy to get to make it and get people's reaction to it. So
where are you guys at in terms of production? So it was just successfully funded on Kickstarter.
Yes, so
a couple of weeks ago.
Yep. So the campaign is done. We hit our goal. We exceeded it by a few dollars, and now we're just kind of waiting for Kickstarter to do their thing and send us the money. And right now I'm trying to schedule it out, and we're trying to get the budget finalized so we can start hiring people. And we're hoping to shoot in early March. That's our set date right now, but we're still just kind of waiting for that money to come in and make sure we've got it before we start telling people we've got it. Because I've been there before. When you tell somebody we're doing something, they're like, it didn't work out. So, but
and is the so this is going to be your first web series as an ongoing series, and one of the reasons I was really excited to you, aside from all of the conversation that we've had up to this point, which has been awesome, is talking about web series in general and producing for a web series. Is that going to change your approach at all? And in terms of like distribution and things of that nature, how do you get it out to audiences to see?
Yeah, like web series, like I said before, it was like you make a short film, that's your business card. And now everything's come to streaming, and everybody's got a streaming platform. And so there's just everybody wants to be on Netflix, but you can't get into Netflix unless you got like a manager or agent or know somebody who knows somebody. And so like with a web series, it's kind of you can go make it, you can put it out there, and there are a couple of festivals you could send it to, but really it's just anybody can go make something, throw it up there. And so there are, I think HBO has picked up web series in the past where somebody went and made like a small web series, and HBO picked it up and they redid the whole thing with a bigger production. But that's kind of where we're coming at with this. Let's make it with what we have, throw it out there, and see if anybody will bite, and we'll send it to some festivals. But there's definitely a different approach to like an episodic storytelling rather than a short film that's kind of self-contained or a feature film. And so to me, that's what I'm looking forward to, is trying to tell it in a episodic way and make sure that we hit the right beats with the audience, because almost like each episode's kind of like a short film, but they got to fit together and make a whole story. And there's definitely like one or two things in the script that I'm really looking forward to, and making sure that we hit that cliffhanger at the end of the episode to keep people going. And I enjoy binge watching things, but then at the same time, I like waiting each week to watch it and get people talking. So I'm not sure exactly if we're going to throw it all out there at once. We probably will, since it's going to be so short, but we haven't really discussed that just yet. So
very exciting. And I don't think we've introduced the synopsis of Lost. Is it Lost and Found or Lost Found?
It's Lost/Found, so I guess just Lost Found. There's no and. But like I said, Rachel wrote it, and so it's about a writer, a novelist who lives in Atlanta, and he's trying to finish his book. So go back to all the writing topics we have, and so his girlfriend rents him an Airbnb in the South to go finish his book, and so he gets down there and. He's in the South. He's in a new place, new people to interact with, and he's trying to write his book, but he's got writer's block. And all of a sudden, a tornado comes out of nowhere, and a iron lung lands in the backyard. And so here he is at some stranger's house in a strange city in a strange town, and there's an iron lung in the backyard, and there's also a dead person in the iron lung in the backyard that he now has to deal with rather than writing his book. And so I kind of explained it to somebody, it's kind of like a bizarre Wizard of Oz, whether, Dorothy goes to the Wizard of Oz, but here he's there and all the strange characters kind of come out of the woodwork as he's trying to deal with this dead body.
That's a cool description.
Yeah. And so he's trying to do that and write, but they're kind of, to me, like, my style of storytelling is using like a normal protagonist and then having all these crazy people around that protagonist to interact with. And so that's, our writer is kind of the everyday writer. And then he comes to this strange land with this strange thing to deal with and all these strange, crazy characters come in, and some may help him, some may not. So,
yeah, I think that's what resonated about your short films with me, so far that I was able to watch, is that, as you described about Lost Found, the emphasis is on the characters and their relationship to other, as
right.
opposed to some action event
Yeah.
driving. I mean, of course, the iron lung, which is an old medical device falling into his backyard, that is an event, but presumably what drives the story forward is actually his interaction with people, not the event itself. And I think, that's probably, to some degree, I imagine, born out of the limitations of budget and scope of the projects that you've worked on. But at the same time, I think that's a real strength, and those are the stories that I like to watch in general. And I think that's why your stories resonated with me, and why it seems like Lost Found is such a great fit. It's funny to find out that you're related to each other.
Yeah.
And that's how the relationship formed, because it seems like a perfect match between your approach to filmmaking and Rachel's story.
Yeah, I kind of related to Parked, because like with Parked, my idea was tell a story in one location that's interesting. And so, he's literally, our main character is literally handcuffed to the car, so he can't go anywhere. And then, the crazy character comes in and interacts with him, and then the crazy stuff happens and interacts with him. And so with Lost Found, he's at one house and he can't go anywhere, and then the crazy stuff comes and interacts with him. And so I definitely like, using location limitation as possible, and then just seeing what we can do and what the characters can be, to come in and interact, I guess, if that makes sense at all. I don't.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes I ramble and I forget. I go, I don't know where I was going with that. And
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I would lay the groundwork and say, like, some of the tidbits that you've shared today, I think, are really important for anybody to hear in any creative space, but specifically indie filmmaking. It's like golden nuggets of knowledge that you've slowly mined over the last 20 years, that you're sharing.
Yeah, well, like,
thanks.
Now's the perfect time for like anybody to go make something. Like I said, we have camera phones that you can use. It's just, you got to know what to expect out of it. Don't think you're going to go make $100 million movie with a camera phone as your first film. And really, it's not, before it was, when everything was on film, the cameras and film was so expensive, you just couldn't make it. And now it's like, we've solved the actual making of the film. Now it's like getting people to just watch it and distribute it. That's the big hurdle. Like, making the film is easy. Anybody can do it. And now it's just getting people, there's so much stuff to watch. It's just getting eyeballs on it is the difficult part. But, if you're one of those bizarre, twisted people who's got to make films, go do it. If there's anything else you can do that'll make you happy, go do that instead. Because it's not easy, but it's so much fun to do, and so that's why I still do it. Like I said, every project, there comes a point where I hate it and just want to give up. But once the project's done, and I find somebody to watch it and they're laughing and they get the jokes, that's where the enjoyment comes, and that's what fuels me to keep going. So. But yeah, like, there's so many tutorials on YouTube. Just that, make that be your film school, and just go make stuff. It's going to be bad and horrible, but just go make stuff. Don't stop. So. Yeah.
I think, obviously it's fulfilling to make these, otherwise you wouldn't continue. And I did remember my question. So
all right.
You gave us a great point to finish, but I'm going to keep going. Are you okay with for time? Yeah. Okay. So my question is a little bit more technical. Again, I did notice watching your films on Out Jogging Pictures that it's heavily scored, and very creative use of Foley and background sounds and noise. And I really appreciated that. I wonder if using the sound to the degree that you've used it in the past is going to be possible stylistically for a web series, and to what degree that's going to translate over, and to what degree it might not.
Yeah, stylized that way, this is definitely different than what I've done in the past. Like with Park, there's so much sound design that it kind of gets lost, but is done on purpose. And even like with Circles, the one I just did the remake of, like I put a lot of sound design in that. And so this one, it's stylized. This one doesn't have a lot of sound effects, but I think there's definitely some room to play with, whether it be intentional or just like, I kind of like to just put sound out in the background, and depending on how you're listening to it, if you got a good set of headphones or you're just listening to your phone, that level of who might hear it and who might not. And so sometimes I kind of like to just put things out there, so if you are listening to it with a great sound system, then that person's going to hear it and maybe pick up on it. So it's kind of like little surprises, I guess.
And maybe if it's surround sound, some people are like, what's going on outside?
Yeah, something's moving or whatever. So yeah, it definitely will be different sound wise, and definitely the score is going to be different, but and it's not different as in a bad thing. So I'm looking forward to approaching it differently than I have. So, but I'm not worried. So I feel confident, but it definitely it will be interesting. So
yeah, it's exciting to see, and your use of sound effects and the scoring of the film of your short films that I watched so far was I enjoyed that aspect of it quite a bit. And I have a kind of because I spent so much time editing my film, I have a high level of awareness, I would say, for what was probably folly,
right.
what was added in after, what might have not been, and you blurred those lines perfectly for me.
Well, that's good.
And have you done any ADR, re-recording of vocals for your previous projects?
No, a lot of people hate ADR, and I try to do that. As I thought on Parked we were going to have to, because of the lawnmowers and the trains, but because of the microphone we had and the post production that I was able to do, we haven't had to do any ADR, because there's good ADR where you can't tell, and there's just really bad ADR. And so if you can avoid ADR altogether, do that. But there are some instances where you can't. And so just make sure when you do it that you've got either hire somebody who knows how to do it and it can be done well, because that will definitely throw the audience off if it's not synced up. And so I think that's why I spend more time with sound. I don't have the best sound production in any of my films. I'm not going to say it's the best, but I do try to make it, as best as I can, because I know that sound is definitely something that people, it will make or break a film if it's bad sound or good sound. And so I'm still trying to perfect it and make it, as good as I can. So
yeah, sound is hard, and I think it's definitely one of those things that if you notice it, it's probably not for a good reason.
Right. Yeah.
If you notice it, you're being pulled out of the story and realizing that there was a slip in editing or something like that. And the best compliment a sound designer could get is that people just watched the movie and nobody said anything about the sound. Maybe
no compliment's the best compliment. Yeah. It's kind of like with visual effects. If nobody points them out, then it's the best compliment ever. So,
and then what's, not to shoot over Lost Found. I know that you guys, based on the introductory video in the Kickstarter, are planning hopefully to do multiple seasons, but what about for you as a filmmaker, outside of Lost Found?
Well, it's funny because at the beginning of this year, I put out The Big Cowing, and that was our big 20th film. And, then the world kind of went haywire and everything kind of got thrown off course. But I remember when I released The Big Cowing, I was kind of expecting it to be bigger than it was. And, it could have just been the time that I think we put it out in March. And so everything was just going crazy then. And so there was a couple of months where I was just kind of figuring out what to do. I was kind of depressed because, I'd spent so much time on it and it just didn't get as much fanfare as I'd hoped, and I didn't really write anything for a while, and maybe about August, I kind of just started getting new ideas, and so I do have a script for another short film completed that I would like to make, and I have two other ideas that I haven't written. One is for a feature film, and one's for another short film. And then obviously, if whatever happens with Lost Found, if we go on to make the next season, or if it, something happens to it and it gets picked up or something, so there, I at least have maybe five things I'm working on. So we'll see what comes out next. But I'm one of those people where I've got to be working on something, whether if I'm currently working on something, but I got to have something ready to go, because they say if by any chance at all you get a meeting with somebody in Hollywood, you got to have something else to show to them besides what you're talking about. So you just got to have something ready, something to go, so they know that you're not just a one-trick pony, that you can keep making stuff. And so that's kind of what I do. I at least want to have 3 ideas ready to go, maybe one ready, and then what I'm working on. So
nice. Yeah. And what would be the circumstances that you would pull the trigger on doing a feature-length film on your own, or developing that as your next project for Out Jogging Pictures?
Well, I know Parked, that was the first feature film script I wrote, and so we made the short film on purpose to make that a feature film. We released it, and it didn't get as much buzz as we thought, and then we kind of realized, okay, we kind of need more money than we thought we could, because the location would not be ideal for a feature film. It was okay to make in that short film, but if we were going to be there for a few weeks, it wouldn't be the best location. So then we'd have to go find a new place, and so it kind of just fizzled out. And for me, like, making this Kickstarter campaign, as fun as it was a lot of work to get as much as we did. So I've kind of realized that, we may not be able to earn a whole heck of a lot of money to make a feature film. So if I was to make one, it would definitely be like a very low key, like, a lot of my films have some kind of like sci-fi element or some fantasy, like, a balloon that comes to life, or somebody, in the woods time traveling or something. And so for this feature, it's kind of just, I want to say, as normal as possible. So, no sci-fi elements, no special effects, but it's definitely a quirky, twisty, stylized story about normal life as I can. And so it would definitely be as low budget, but entertaining as possible. Like, for me, I got to tell an entertaining story no matter what. Like, there are some people who can tell the best dramas in the world, and I'm so happy for them. But if I tried to tell a drama, it would be horrible. And so I know that. And so that's why, I'll take a story about a man dying, but instead he's dying from becoming a cow. There's got to be some sort of entertaining twist, just enough for me to be interested in it. And so that's kind of what this feature would be about.
Yeah. How did you describe that style? Because all of your films have that kind of element of abnormal.
Yeah.
Random.
Well,
I'll say random. We're on the,
Alan,
podcast.
Alan, he was a doctor McCowing, and he was one of the hunters in helium, and he was in circles. He described it best. He said, your sense of storytelling is like wonderfully weird. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of, they are weird, but they do have like a meaning to them. Cause like, I try to explain helium to people, like, it's a balloon that kills people. I'm like, well, the balloon's like a father balloon, and he watches his whole family get popped in front of him. So now he's a father who watches his kids die, who goes, it's like a Liam Neeson movie. It's just with a balloon instead. So there is a moral compass to what he's doing. And like with McCowan, there's a moral compass as to, what the medical insurance company is doing to people. And so I try to throw some kind of humanity into it, whether it, be very far in the background. But so when he said, your stories are wonderfully weird, I'm like, yeah, I'll take that. That's good. So
how do you generate the base concept for these films? You kind of described it as the step by step for the I'm drawing a blank. The balloon one.
Yeah, like it's for me, they either come as like an idea or like a prop. So like for Helium, it was okay,
Helium
what
2,
if
yeah.
Pixar made a horror film? That was the idea. So then I took that and went somewhere else. And then for like Parked, it was like, okay, what if my guy's handcuffed to a car?
So
That's the
that's the
prop.
initial, that's the catalyst, that's the idea. A
Yeah,
guy handcuffed to a car, and then you
yeah,
build on that one
yeah. So like I
element,
knew
that
like,
one scene.
okay, one location, if he's literally handcuffed to his car that can't go anywhere, he can't go anywhere and it's got to be there. And so I'll take it, or like, I'll take a prop. So, like in Circles, there's the skeleton. And so I have this skeleton. I'm like, okay, well, what if people are just walking in the woods and they find a skeleton? Okay. Because at first, there was no time travel to Circles whatsoever. It was literally just two guys walking in the woods and they find a skeleton. And then I started thinking about it and okay, well, what if the skeleton's one of them? Okay, well, how does it become one of them if they're walking in the woods? Okay, well, maybe there's got to be some kind of time travel, or maybe they're dead, or something's going on. And so then but it's either an idea, or sometimes it's even just a title of a movie. And I'll say, okay, well, that makes a good title, but what's the story about? Let me think about this and go from there. So, but yeah, it's usually just one little thing. Like I like to kind of go into like thrift stores or antique shops, and I'll find something and go, okay, well, what's the story here with this, tool? What's the story with this, hat or something? And then
I like that.
yeah,
You answered my obnoxious question before I asked it, which is,
okay,
how do you generate that initial idea? How do you generate like skeleton in the woods? And you just
yeah.
answered that. Are there any other ways that you find inspiration? I mean, it's lovely to hear that you have this idea and then you build out from that. I'm curious, you named thrift shops as one source for that initial idea. Are there any other, places you go for that initial inspiration, for that initial idea?
Probably not for the idea, but I know for inspiration, like Christopher Guest. I don't know if you know who he is. Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Okay, he was the guy who wrote Spinal Tap, and so his mockumentary style of filmmaking is the reason that I wanted to do it, because after I made my first short film, it was a few years before I got into college, and I took a film class in college, and one of the final projects was to write a film, and I was big into Christopher Guest at the time. I watched Spinal Tap, and I think A Mighty Wind had just came out, and so I liked that mockumentary style of storytelling, because really you could just take a camera and film somebody. You didn't have to worry about lights and cinematic. It was just kind of like a documentary. And so that was a big inspiration for all my earlier work. And so he has been an inspiration for me. And then like right now, like Taika Waititi, like I watched all his stuff, and his style of storytelling where it's, happy, sad. It's like it's a comedy, but it's really a sad story. And so I like the way he can tell the story, and there's a lot of humanity, and you can laugh and you can cry. And so his style is inspiring to me. And Napoleon Dynamite and Gentleman Broncos, I think Jared Hess, his movies, they're kind of like that monotone, dry sense of humor. And so I guess all three of those guys, that if you were to mash them all up into a blender, that's kind of my style I think I go for. So I definitely get inspired by other people's works and other movies, but as far as like coming up with my own ideas, it's definitely like seeing something or coming up with a title, or definitely just taking like a serious subject like medical insurance and making it funny. Like there's a lot of serious subjects that have happened this year that I've thought about, okay, how can I take that, either political agenda or social commentary, and how can I add to it, draw awareness to it, but make it funny? And so for me, there's a hard line between taking a serious subject and not making fun of it, but drawing awareness to it, So it goes back to like, I don't want to make fun of somebody dying, because there's nothing funny about that, but I want to draw awareness to what they're going through with how expensive dying is, and how expensive insurance is. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, what can I draw awareness to, but not make fun of, but make fun with, I guess. Because
Yeah.
like I can, like, for me personally as a person, like I can almost laugh at anything. Like that's how I cope with stuff, is laughing. It's not because I'm, if I see somebody fall down, it's not because I enjoy that they got hurt. It's just, it's because laughing is my coping mechanism. And so there's a lot of sad things where I laugh at, and it's not because I'm a horrible person. It's just that that's how I do it. And so if I can find humor in something and draw awareness to and not make fun of, that's what I try to go for, at least.
That is a noble intent, I think, for sure. And I think I didn't get to totally finish it, but with Becowing, I think you hit that note, hit that stride, and walked that line quite well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I don't know. I have one last question
All right.
or comment, subject that we could discuss, and that's your "What Was I Thinking" series, which was pretty cool. I only watched one so far, but I intend on going back. So what were you thinking when you started to do your "What Was I Thinking" series, which is you kind of talking through your mindset and some of the creative process of your short films?
Yeah, I got to come back and finish those, because I had planned, like, when I realized that 2020 was going to be our 20th year for our 20th film, like I kind of wanted to do something to celebrate. And so I've never done like a director's commentary. I always like listen to director's commentary so I can hear what the directors are thinking when they make movies. And so it's kind of a sad, twisted way. I'm like, well, how can I get people to watch our old stuff that's no good? Well, what if I just talk about it, but do it visually, so they have to watch the movie while I talk about it? And so that's kind of me going, okay, I'm going to make you watch this horrible film I made 20 years ago, but I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to try to make it look as good as possible. And so that's where it came from. It's just kind of my own director's commentary, but I guess a visual commentary, so I can make people watch the old stuff. But yeah, I haven't finished them. I gotta do the last three. So.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed what I saw, and I think I'll go back and watch some more. And that kind of brings us full circle back to your days as a kid watching Ninja Turtles director's cut, figuring out how they were doing it. And, that's what I hope to achieve over the course of doing this podcast, is kind of digging into creative brains and learning about process, inspiration, troubleshooting, the voice in your head that tells you what the hell are you doing, and then the person inside that perseveres and ends up finishing the project.
Right. Yeah. It's, for, like I said before, like for somebody who doesn't create and it's not an artist, it's, it's weird for them to see an artist and what they're going through, like mentally. And so that's why when you reached out to contact me, I went back and listened to your other stuff. And so I enjoy hearing other people and how they do work, because it's like, okay, yeah, somebody I can relate to somebody now, man. We understand each other. We're not just weirdos with tics and stuff.
Well, that's a high compliment for me to receive, that you related, because that's exactly how I hope people engage with these interviews, and hopefully in the end, some way, whether it's taking the whole conversation or little tidbits here and there, that they benefit from it at the end.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you for having me, and we'll definitely promote this whenever it gets finished. So
yeah,
I enjoyed it very much.
Well, thank you very much. Any parting words from you, and then also in those parting words, where people can find Lost Found once it is released?
If you're on Facebook, you can go to, is it Lost Found Season 1, the Facebook page, or if you just want to go to outjogging.com, you can find all our social media through there, and it'll be linked, because there's so many social medias, I can't even keep up with them these days. And so if you just go to outjogging.com, you'll find them all and be able to link. And like I said, we're
obnoxious one more time, because one of the questions, which is like the obvious question that I've been meaning to ask this whole time, is why out jogging?
I figured that question was coming.
I didn't even write it down. It was so obvious that I was going to ask that, and you almost escaped without me getting to it.
Well, there's two answers. there's the one real answer that's like an inside joke that nobody will understand, and then there's kind of the more professional, serious answer. So the professional, serious answer is, out jogging is like a metaphor for moving. So like moving pictures is what they used to call movies back in the day. It's like, let's go make a moving picture. So out jogging pictures is moving pictures. So it's, it's making movies.
Are you able at all? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the real reason was back in the early days, one of my friends needed to do a school project, and this was like late on a Friday night, like maybe like 11 or something. It's like, yeah, we got to make a movie or something for my school project. And so like, I got a camera, let's go shoot something. And so we all got in the car and went to his house. And at some point during the movie, it was like almost 100% ad-libbed, and it doesn't make any sense. But I made the joke about, my dog got ran over, and then the guy's like, "Oh, did a truck do it?" And I'm like, "No, he was out jogging and didn't see it." And I don't know why, but the thought of somebody like running over a dog was just so funny to me. It could have been because I was, 20 at the time and had that adolescent brain, but like that just like someone just running over, like, okay, the dog was run over, but it was like running over. Yeah, it's just, I thought that was so funny. And so that's where it comes from.
So the dog was out jogging, but he got run over by somebody who was out jogging.
Yeah. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but I thought it was funny. And really, if you go back and watch, I think maybe our first 3 films, there's one scene where like somebody's like come back and they've got like dog fur over them. They're like, "Oh, I was out jogging, I didn't see the dog." And so like I tried to put the joke in like almost every one of them back in the early days, and then just nobody got it. And so I'm like, this is dumb.
we're all going to be watching with our eyes peeled and lost found for somebody to talk.
Yeah, I'll see if I can throw it in. We'll see.
Slip it by everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, I got all of my obnoxious questions, and so before I cut you off with making sure I got that last one in there, you were describing that people could find out about the release and inevitably watch it if they go to outjogging.com.
Yes, .com.
People must contact you all the time asking to buy that website address.
Well, I get a lot of, so you're a runner, or you do photography for like sports and stuff. I'm like, no, not at all. I mean, I do run, but I'm not a runner, and I don't do photography for sports. So, but yeah, sadly, nobody's asked me to buy it yet. I was kind of hoping, like back in the early .com days, like, maybe if I buy this, somebody will want it for a lot of money. But no, not yet. So, but yeah, like I said, we plan on shooting in March, so maybe May release. So
that's a pretty quick turnaround. Yeah.
Yeah. So
very good. Well, Brian Christopher White, if you're looking for Brian on IMDb or elsewhere, and you can also check out his his short films on YouTube by searching Out Jogging Pictures.
Yes.
And we look forward to speaking with you again once everything's released. And I think everybody's going to be looking for that person with a dog fur covered sweaty jogging shirt in Lost Found to be released in mid-spring or so.
All right, well, thank you. Yeah, I would be more than happy to come back and then talk about it once it's done. So we'll definitely stay in touch.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Brian.
All right, well, thank you.
And enjoy your random. My fellow randoms, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Brian Christopher White, and that you are still hanging on to listen to my debriefing, my post-show wrap-up, where I essentially just talk about some key takeaways and areas where I think I could improve the podcast before letting you go. So before I let you go, key takeaways from this podcast, there were probably too many to count without re-listening to the conversation with a pen and pad in hand. Off the top of my head, Chris gave really great pointers for any aspiring filmmaker. Basically, just do it. You very likely have some of the tools readily accessible to you. maybe you have a phone with a camera. There's also probably some free or at least cheap editing software that you could edit the video. You could take the video and then edit it on your phone, depending on what phone you have. If you don't have a phone, maybe you could borrow a phone to use somebody else's camera. They're, really ubiquitous, these camera phones and smartphones nowadays. So if you want to produce something, you could learn a lot by watching YouTube and reading books, but at some point the tires need to hit the road and you just need to get out there and start driving. Well, I'll end the metaphor there. You need to get out there and start filming and just making stuff, because that's the best way to learn, as per Brian's recommendation. Another takeaway is that you might not like what you first make, and you should expect to not like what you first make, because likely what you first make is not going to be all that great. It might be good, might be a good start, but you should set your bar for quality high so that you're constantly improving and looking to improve. And I liked our conversation about balancing that self-criticism with, acknowledging the good in what you're doing and how making it a positive reflection as opposed to beating yourself up for making something that you don't think is that good. You look at something you did in the past, maybe it's not good, but think about the good points and the learning points. I feel like I'm writing a children's book for myself right now, but it's a lesson I often have to reteach myself, is basically, learn from your mistakes. And in that way, those mistakes will become admirable. And that was something that was reinforced by way of my conversation with Brian. And, there's a lot of other key takeaways for his recommendations for equipment and, specifics about filmmaking, but I'll leave it at those two today for creatives in general. Areas where I think I could improve the podcast. Today went pretty smoothly. Some brain farts. I lost my train of thought and didn't jot down a question I thought I had that I came up with over the course of the conversation. Lost it, regained my tracking, and was able to remember the question. So I need a better strategy of buying some time if I forget my question, essentially. And, all my guests have been great if I needed a second to recalibrate, and I certainly appreciate that. What else? Today I'm filming actually 3 intros and 3 debriefings, because I have a little bit of a backlog of episodes that I recorded but did not yet produce and send out into the world. So this is a little bit behind the scenes-y kind of stuff, but I have 2 other shirts over there, and I changed my shirts in between filming the introductions for these 3 episodes. One is for, if anybody's watching on YouTube, it doesn't seem like I don't do my laundry and or change my clothes. And 2, when I'm editing it the visual of me wearing a different shirt helps me tie this video to a specific interview. If I was wearing the same shirt for, 3 different video introductions and debriefings, it would be a little bit harder to sort through the files as I'm editing those videos. So that's a little bit of a behind the scenes. And today I just recorded actually my episode with Brian, and I'm recording my intro and outro, an hour after my conversation with him concluded. Usually it's a day or 2 after my episode records that I actually end up filming the intro and outro. And the reason for that is because, some of the conversations are long, and once I hang up and I go get a drink of water and use the restroom and come back, I'm a little bit deflated because I spent a lot of my energy participating and making sure that the conversation went as good as I could get it to go. So a lot of times my energy goes from high to low, and it's not the right time to film right after I finish a interview. But today was an exception. I felt energetic. I felt very on the ball. Maybe not right now, but yeah, I felt very articulate and like I was going to be able to bring a level of energy to these intros and outros. So I decided to just, bang them out and get these 3 under my belt so that I could release these 3 episodes to the world for any listeners out there to hear. So my fellow randoms, that is it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I certainly did. This is episode 15 and I'm cutting it close, but I think I might squeeze out 20 in 2020. If I do, I'll probably, do one of these pats on the back, on my own back, at some point, but not quite there yet. That was a premature patting of my own back. We're getting there. We're trying. Might not happen, but certainly putting all of my energy behind achieving my goal. And that was another key takeaway, right? Brian also talked about setting goals and setting deadlines as a motivator. So that's my motivator, 20 episodes in 2020, and we are on our way. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. Even if I don't know that you're listening, even if you don't leave a comment, I am just excited that you are hearing these words now, and I hope that you got something from my guest and all they had to share. Until next time, get out there and enjoy your random.